Live and ready to go. Excellent. Well, David, thanks so much for being here. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Abhinav Kapoor, co-founder and CEO of Bikky. We are a customer data platform for restaurants. Our mission is to help restaurants access all of their guest data across point of sale, payments, online ordering, reservations, loyalty, and help them measure the incrementality of their marketing menu and operational decisions. It is my distinct pleasure to be joined by President and CFO of Robeks, David Rawnsley. David, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
If you could, for folks who aren't familiar with Robeks, just quick intro on you, your background, your role, and maybe a state of the state of where the brand has been over the past few years and where it sits today.
Yeah, so Robeks, we've a Los Angeles-based brand founded in 1996, where we opened our first restaurant. So been around for a little while. Um, we currently offer fresh juices, smoothies, acai bowls, and a line of avocado and nut butter. Toast, we're about 100 and just over 100 units in 13 different states. Uh, Primarily in California. 40% of our locations are in California. The balance are across the country.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, wow. So I started with Robeks, I'll say over a decade ago. My background is in accounting and finance. I didn't, jump from a CFO role someplace else to a CFO role here at Robeks. It was a little bit different journey for me, in that my wife and I were starting a family, and I always wanted to be in business for myself. So went out to find a business to either purchase or start. Was not necessarily looking at franchising, but kept getting drawn in because of the proven business model and the support that it offers. So I entered the Robeks system in a development role at the time, became a franchisee myself,
Nice.
and then moved into our corporate office as CFO, and shortly thereafter as president. That was about, 6 years ago now. Um, at that time, Robeks had been around for 20 plus years. We had a great product offering and a great foundation. But it felt to me that my new role as president gave me the opportunity to evolve the brand,
Hmm.
which I believed it needed at the time. So we did a number of things. We revamped the menu and brought in some new offerings. We started to leverage our technology platform, which was not very robust at the time. We changed our consumer-facing elements and marketing efforts to be more food-focused. I mean, fortunately, in our segment, the food photographs well, as opposed to what I would call theme-centric, which would be, athletes running on the beach or something like that.
That's what I was going to ask you, is like kind of what was that actual transition? But it sounds like a total overhaul, basically, of of everything across marketing, ops, you know,
Well,
operations, franchise relations, all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, it was, again, not revolutionary, but evolutionary. I mean,
Yep.
we just sort of refreshed everything, upgraded it to sort of where the segment was at
Yeah.
at the time. Maybe we're a little bit behind, 7 or so years ago.
Yeah.
We had a new facilities plan in place with different decor, which we were also able to really focus on pushing out at that time as
Nice.
well.
Nice.
Mhm.
One question that's always interesting to me, it seems like, in all of our conversations back and forth, this idea of comp growth or comp lift has sort of come, I feel like there's a rising tide lifts all boats kind of aspect to the better for you smoothie category that Robeks operates in, especially, in hindsight with the pandemic and people being more health conscious and health oriented. For that reason, you look at other brands doing super well, whether it's Tropical Smoothie or Smoothie King. What do you feel like is Robex's core differentiation within the category? And then I would say relative to those specific players as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it boils down to our product offering. I mean, everybody in the category, or not everybody, but most have smoothies, acai bowls,
Hmm.
and juices. But we all have unique recipes, different ingredients. I think that our menu innovation is a little bit uh, ahead maybe,
Yeah.
if I could be so biased.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
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 Uh, yeah.
That's fair.
So we were the first in our category to offer, avocado toast and nut butter toast. And we're always looking to take the next step and meet the consumers where they're at, but not get too far ahead of what they're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then it sounds like, are you bullish on, I mean, I'm gonna, of course, you're biased on this, but so maybe I'll ask it a different way. But how do you think about the trajectory of the category overall from here? Especially in an environment like now where, yes, the industry is going to surpass $1 trillion in sales. Within that, there's categories that are certainly rising, like yours and chicken. And with others, there are certainly those that are maybe tapering off, like fast casual burger seems to be kind of the one that's being hit hardest right now. But could you talk us through what you feel like is the trajectory for your category specifically over the next couple of years?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're in uh, I'm not going to say a health food category, but we're in a healthier for you category. Um, and that's been the case since the inception of the segment, 20 plus years ago. And that's never really going to go, out of style, especially at a time when the country seems to be getting less healthy than it was 20 years ago. And so I think, the segment's in a unique position to meet the demands of consumers who are looking for something healthier but want something that tastes great as well, which everything in our category does. And historically started out as smoothies. Number of years ago, juices really started to proliferate. Not so much anymore, but the segment or the category was in a position to capitalize on that consumer demand. Bowls, you know, years ago really started to have their moment, and that continues. And we were in a unique position to meet that consumer demand. Toast in a similar way. And so we don't know what's next, but there's always going to be a next sort of subcategory in the healthier for you
Yeah.
segment. And so and health is always going to be a focus on people. So
Yeah.
we're uniquely positioned in that regard that we can evolve to meet consumer demands. We're perhaps straight up burger and fries isn't in a position to do that.
Right. And I guess that speaks to kind of the critical importance you touched on a little bit earlier around menu innovation specifically, and this
Mhm.
idea of what do you do quarterly new items? Is that the way you think about it? Like, I guess what's your menu innovation calendar look like?
Yeah, so we do 3 to 4 what we call limited time offerings each year. That's our cadence. We have some seasonal items that we bring back on a regular basis. Our Walea watermelon in the summer and a pumpkin in the fall.
Yeah. And the
We have
caramel
a new.
apple, which recently launched, I think, as well. Which, yeah,
Yep, that's right.
fall
Yeah.
item. Yeah.
And that's a new one.
Yep.
So we use those LTO windows to sort of innovate on smoothies, and more importantly, ingredients
Mm.
within the smoothie. What can we find that's, trending, provides a great taste and is a little bit unique. And then over time, those that perform well, we keep track of them and they may end up as a permanent item on the menu board or something that comes back on a recurring annual seasonal basis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so, leading into my next question here, where, you guys operate, like you said, was it 40% of units in California? And
Yeah.
is that right? And of course, the home of the brand is in Southern California as well. Um, Obviously California, well, stepping back, like the broader environment feels challenged right now, right? Like I think
Mhm.
there's few trends or a few factors hitting all at once between inflation and value and maybe general oversaturation in the market in terms of the number of concepts or offerings available to consumers. And yet y'all have been surprisingly resilient to those factors. You're not immune from it, I would say, and I don't think any
Yeah.
brand is immune from it, but y'all have been surprisingly resilient to it. So menu innovation feels like one of the pillars that builds on that differentiation and enables you to adapt. Can you talk us through maybe what are some of the other reasons, whether it's low startup costs, good franchisee relationships, unit economics, what are some of the things that you feel like have kept Robeks resilient in this environment, especially given how challenged it feels like for a lot of other brands?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, we've got a relatively low initial investment compared to other fast casuals, no cooking, no hoods.
Mm,
So low investment, easy operation. which has become more and more important, given the challenging environment to hire and retain key team members. So operational simplicity plays more of a role, I think, today than it did, pre-pandemic, let's say, because you don't have as much continuity now.
Yeah.
And those have really helped us. The brand itself is really focused on the unit economics. I mean, we have 3 company stores and 100 plus franchise locations.
Yeah.
And if you're going to franchise, well, and even if you're not, I mean, the unit economics is really what it comes down to. And to your point, it's a challenging environment, and so in addition to the menu innovation, you got to look at all the business components of that innovation too: food costs, execution, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Um, And I guess like one of those costs obviously is labor. And AB 1228 is obviously a big thing, especially for I think what's the minimum is 60 units, is that right? And obviously you guys are close to double that threshold.
Yep.
So maybe talk us through about how you've adapted and almost absorbed the impact of AB 1228. And for folks who aren't in California, that's the increase in minimum wage to, was it 25?
20.
20 to 20.
Yep.
Yeah, I shouldn't say 25.
Yeah.
I saw your face when I said 25. So we'll keep it
Yeah.
it's at 20,
Well,
but
look,
talk
I
us through how
mean,
you've adapted to that. Yeah.
it was a significant enough that, like other milestones, I remember exactly where I was when I heard the news,
Yeah.
uh, which was
Yeah.
on the car on my way to one of our stores in Ohio.
Yeah.
Um, and it was significant. So we learned about it about a year ago, September of this time. Um, and it went from really 15.50 on December 31st to $20 on April 1st. So that's a 30% increase. And the line item on your P&L that
Yeah.
that is largest already to start with. So that was uh, meaningful. So we early on developed a franchisee profitability task force to address it. So we accumulated 8 franchisees, not just in California, but across the country, because we knew that we needed to make meaningful changes that were going to impact the brand everywhere,
Yeah.
not just California. And we met on a very, regular basis every 2 weeks to start. And the goal was, what changes are we going to make to maintain profitability? Uh, the lowest hanging fruit was changes to the menu with a focus on labor efficiency.
Yeah.
And I can get into that, a little bit. We modified the base of our acai bowls to reduce training time and make them more efficient to make. We eliminated an entire category and other smoothies that had, were maybe more of our complex builds,
Yeah.
but more importantly, required extra time on training. And then it took team members longer to become proficient on those smoothies. So we eliminated some of those. We looked at our discount structure and actually made some changes there to reduce our discounts, um, and ultimately ended up with the cooperation of the task force and the implementation, some meaningful changes. And so far, the results are in, and our food costs are down, and our labor's actually down even after the increase a little
Amazing.
bit. So
Yeah.
it was a good process for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can we talk a little bit more about that, the franchisee profitability task force? And,
Mhm.
it's again, it seems like sort of when you transitioned into the role of president and you were able to take a holistic look at the business across menu, ops, labor, etc. What were some of the hypotheses that you had coming into that? Like what were some of the changes? It seems like eliminating a category is a big deal. What were you thinking about in terms of how guests would react to a change like that?
Well, we knew we were going to lose some traffic, but as a result of eliminating somebody's, favorite, which is what they came in for. But one of the
Right,
considerations, if we were going to eliminate something, was, is there an easy migration from that menu item to another item on the menu?
right.
and our hypothesis was, the category we eliminated was low calorie category.
Yep.
Because it was low calorie, it had a number of additional ingredients to add the flavor impact.
I never thought of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have similar nutritional information in our superfood category. So the hypothesis was that we can easily transition a low calorie smoothie drinker to the superfood category. And as it turns out, I know we'll talk about how we've used Bikky later on,
Yeah.
but we were able to use Bikky in a way to help us legitimize the decision, and sort of prove out our hypothesis after the fact. And we made these changes to the menu, knowing that if we really punted on something we shouldn't have, nothing is ever entirely permanent. So
Reversal. Yeah.
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 Um,
That's great.
so anyways, it was excellent to have the franchisees. A lot of the ideas came from the task force community in terms of which items, pose the most consternation for new team members, etc.
Who's actually on the task force? I think that's an interesting question. Is it a mix of people at corporate and franchisees? Is it solely franchisees and one representative? Maybe talk us through how the balance of who's on the
Yeah,
task force, because I feel like there's so many things to juggle. So I'm curious to see how you built it and how you kind of aligned all the stakeholders.
yeah. So it was four leadership team members, marketing, operations, supply chain, and technology to a lesser degree, but they were also involved. And technology was a part of what the task force came up with, aside from the menu innovation.
Yep.
I'll mention that or talk about that in a moment.
Yep.
And then it was eight members of the franchise community. Um, the makeup, we tried to get one member from every major market that we operate in. It was skewed a little bit heavier towards California, given the majority of our stores are there. We also wanted veteran franchisees, but also franchisees who were new to the system, because they see things through a different lens. Whereas if you're in the system for a long time doing the same thing over and over, it's less easy to observe the potential changes, at least in our view. So it was an ad hoc committee made up of a variety of 8 franchisees, four leadership team members.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and then maybe talk us through some of the technology changes as well. So we talked about
Yeah.
menu, talk about maybe some of the changes in technology, and I'm always curious. This is a hot button topic right now, where as the penetration of technology is growing within the restaurant community, there's almost this, at the end of the day, people are hospitality people at heart. They care about the guest experience, and there's almost this, pearl clutching about the guest experience being lost. But would love to hear maybe the positive side from you, and what impact, if any, that actually had on the guest experience, either positive or negative. So
Yeah. Well, the technology with the most impact, and maybe the most obvious as we looked at it, was kiosks, right? So um, my belief originally, I was a little bit kiosk resistant. I felt like if I've got my phone in my hand, I've got a kiosk in my hand. But there are a lot of folks that don't want to carry a brand's app on their phone because they've already got a number of other apps.
yeah,
Um, so we really leaned into the kiosk. And of course that saves a little bit on labor, um, because the cashiering step is eliminated. But more importantly, it's allowed for, I mean, you don't eliminate a team member or a full-time employee because you've got kiosks, but allows you to redeploy them
yeah,
in
allocate.
more efficient
Yeah.
ways. And the other thing is we've always told our franchisees, you need to staff to where you want to be, not where you are, because you won't get there because you won't be able to provide a guest experience. And what we found is they can scale back the staff, the team members, and that kiosk is like a relief valve. So
Mhm.
if they're in a growth mode and they're getting that rush at lunch, and then maybe they've understaffed, the guests can still get a good speed of service because the kiosk is available for them to opt into if they want it. Um, we were a little bit concerned about losing some hospitality, but realize that we still have the handoff to
Yes.
engage.
Yes.
And that's really where the hospitality, there's an opportunity to thank somebody, tell them to have a nice day, make sure their order's correct, and that if they have modifications, that you read it out so that they know those modifications were made. It's not like if you order a hamburger with no onion, someone can see if there's onion on there. If you say no strawberries, sub raspberries, for example,
That's tough. Yeah.
they don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, so they want to hear that confirmation that what they ordered is how the drink was made.
Yeah, that's great. And then I think so it's amazing too. I went into we were talking about this earlier, but I when I last time I was in LA, I went to the Pasadena location and it seems like you only need two people to basically run the store, which I think leans into at least at that shift on that day.
Yeah,
Um and it was I mean it was busy, which leans sort of into this idea of being more efficient, reallocating labor, still delivering on the guest experience in a high quality way. And I think the things that I think about that work in this environment are obviously good value, obviously great food, and obviously a great guest experience. Those are sort of the three sort of, non-negotiables, whether you're 1 unit or 1,000 units, it feels like that you need to nail. So
exactly.
yeah, excellent. One question I have is, have you, you've been working with us now for 9 months. Is there anything that you've learned from a guest retention standpoint with some of these changes? Is that how you're looking at it when you look at the customer data in Bikky? Are you thinking like, hey, is there a traffic problem? Is there a retention problem in the wake of some of these changes? I would love for you to just talk a little bit about how you thought about validating some of these changes through our platform.
Um, yeah, well, so for example, as I mentioned, we eliminated an entire category with the assumption that uh, folks were just going to transition or migrate around the menu panel, and we were able to determine that was in fact the case. Um, One of the great things which I didn't realize when we, were initially speaking is all the historical data input that we get, which really gives us a baseline for what our customers' behaviors are like, and then to measure, to measure the impact of the changes we made against that baseline. Um, so it's been pretty valuable for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, that's great. And then I guess what were your expectations coming into when you heard the term CDP or were thinking about CDP or customer data? What were your expectations coming into it? What were you initially looking
Yeah.
for?
Well, I mean, so prior to learning a CDP, we had our loyalty program, which gave us insights into, call it 20% of our customer base, but they were loyalty customers, so their behaviors were not consistent with our customer base as a whole. So by signing on with a CDP and with Bikky in particular, we now have visibility into 80% of our customers. It's not 100%, if there's cash, well, as you know, cash payers or whatnot. But we have a representative sample of our entire customer base rather than just a window of 20%.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I would say that for us or for me in particular, um, there are a lot of curiosities that come up,
Lean but curious team. I think we
lean
talked
but
about as we
curious
talked about it
team.
last night, a lean but curious team. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And so, in addition to be proactive, and I can give you an example of how we first used it in a second, but
Yeah.
a lot of it is conversations with franchisees or conversations with the department head. And someone will say, well, I wonder if, well, we don't have to wonder anymore. Whatever you fill in the wonder if for whatever brand you might be happen to work for, you can actually go back and answer the question by analyzing the data. And there's a lot of a lot of data there, a lot of layers to the onion, super powerful, dashboard that lets you slice and dice it, however you want to look at it. Um, and regionally is one way to look at it, and sort of a use case. So we had a region or a region within our brand where traffic was starting to soften more so than others. We didn't see any real macroeconomic differences in that particular region, but we wanted to understand what was happening. So, was there a shift in the guest experience? So, a problem within the four walls, which would show up as reduced frequency, or was there some external factors outside the four walls indicating that we had reduced traffic? So we were able to leverage Bikky to determine that the frequency really hadn't moved relative to the quarter before,
Yeah.
the 6 months prior. But it really changed was the number of new customers. So we were then comfortable um, focusing our efforts on driving new guests into the stores by external marketing efforts. Whereas had the data said something different, that, well, you've got the same number of customers coming through the front door,
Yeah.
it's just that once they get there, they're not coming back or they're coming less frequency, then we would focus our efforts on the four walls. Okay, what's going on with the guest experience?
Yeah.
So, it was very helpful in helping us determine where to allocate our resources and how best to address what we were trying to get done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I love that. That's a really, and it's so funny because I've been talking about this with the team internally. You have an environment like now where people are like, traffic is up, traffic is down, sales are flat, sales are up. And the next question is, why?
Why?
And so,
Yeah.
like, the thing we always try to frame it is like, the answer is through the customer level data, right? If we can help you go a level deeper than just top line sales, can we help you start to understand some of this stuff? In that context, like, let's talk about the environment a little bit and the current sort of value equation. How do you think about, the value equation for Robeks, especially in the context of, I won't say your category, but I will say the other options around you, at least?
Yeah. So I mean, uh, first part of the value equation is price, right?
Yep.
So we've taken price probably since the pandemic. It's 15%, maybe even 20% in some markets. So
Yeah.
that's over the last 4 years. So it's not insignificant. But so have others in the fast casual. So where a smoothie is relative to an alternative fast casual lunch is still in the same place on a relative basis.
Yep.
So for us, if customers are feeling the pinch of inflation and want to maybe spend less, we're a great meal replacement for sort of half the cost. Or you can pair a smoothie with an avocado toast or some other toast, and it's quite satiating and about the same as if you went out and got an alternative fast casual lunch. So, from a pricing standpoint, I think we're right on point.
Yeah.
But the other side of the equation is that if you're getting an alternative fast casual lunch, it's likely something, you're hungry, you're satisfying an appetite, and you're probably less thinking about nutrition. So our value proposition on the other side of the equation comes in that it's not just a satiating lunch. You're getting nutrition, you're getting something you can feel good about. It's portable, which is great for our category because people are eating on the run. I think this blurring of day parts is helpful for our category as
Yeah.
well. There's not really three distinct meal periods anymore.
Yeah.
And for portable products and maybe lighter meal replacements, that's good for us. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think we're in a pretty good position from a value proposition standpoint.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're benefiting from trade, whether, I mean, call it trade down, call it trade away? Do you feel like you're benefiting that relative to, because it is, let's say, an equally filling, relatively equal price and still better for you option? Do you feel like that there's some element of you guys are gaining traffic from other folks who maybe it's a dollar more burrito, as an example? Like,
Mhm.
do you feel like that's actually happening within the markets that you're operating in today?
It feels that way.
Feels that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, because we don't know where people are
Right.
are are coming from, but um, in terms of what we haven't done in the past is promote pairings, for example.
Mm,
Um, run a promotion on get a smoothie and a toast, and we're starting to look at that.
right.
And actually, we're using Bikky to look at it.
Oh, interesting.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, turns out that, so for example, what do we want to pair a toast with? Well, we know based on customer behavior now that most tickets that contain a toast and a smoothie are either a superfood or a classic smoothie. So, we're not going to run a promotion with our wellness smoothie and the toast because that doesn't seem to be a natural pairing, or it's not what's happening organically
Yeah.
already. The other thing is to look at it by day part. And I had mentioned the blurring of day parts. I think it's 40% of our toast is purchased during our morning day part, meaning 60% is purchased in the afternoon. So now that gives us insights into a good strategy. What do we want to pair a toast with? And do we want to limit it to the breakfast day part? And the answer to that question is no. I
Oh,
mean, there's a
yeah.
propensity for people to do it at lunchtime in the snack, as much as there is for the breakfast.
So, and that's interesting. Yeah, please keep going. I had a separate question, but please keep going. I don't want to cut you off. Yeah.
No, that's it. I was just going to say with regards to there's an opportunity. I said we feel like we're getting trade from someone spending $20 in California on a sandwich that they can get $13 toast and a smoothie. But now we're gonna armed with that information, we're gonna go ahead and promote that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there's a combination. There's one thing is the element of promoting the bundle. The second thing, actually, and this was my question, is does that mean from a menu innovation standpoint, because so much of the toast or toast plus smoothie sales happen in the afternoon, are you leaning more savory then? Does that naturally mean? Because I know you also have the nut butter toast element, which maybe feels a little bit sweeter. Does that mean from a menu innovation standpoint that you're anchoring towards more savory options and again positioning yourself as an option for trade away from the burger, the burrito, the sandwich, etc. Is that kind of the right way to think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want too much out of the bag, but we're
No,
we're
totally.
exploring
Yeah.
some additional offerings. They are focused more on savory, but there is a sweet element in those offerings
Mm,
as well. Yet to come. We're talking 2025.
nice. Nice. That's great. That's great. And then I guess how would you guide how would you guide other brands, maybe those who like what are the levers that you can pull beyond price to appropriately position yourself as a good value for folks in this environment. I think that's something that I've thought about a lot where, it feels like the right levers people can pull are a mix of price, obviously number one, number two is
Hmm.
menu innovation, number three is sort of better promotion around bundles and offers. But I'm curious if there's anything outside of those that you would use to say this is a good value for today's current consumer. Maybe just for Robeks specifically, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed all three. The only one I would leave out is guest experience. I saw somebody uh, speaking not that long ago, and they said at the end of the day, we're all just selling feelings,
Yeah.
which sounds really abstract. And I'm not going to say it was an eye roll on my part, but I was skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but when I'm out and about as a consumer myself,
Yeah.
it really is what motivates you.
Yeah.
I have some place I go to on a regular basis. Um, they know my name and they say hello, David, when I walk in, and I don't make a conscious decision. I'm going to go there because they know my name,
Yeah.
but there's a feeling and an interaction and something intangible that takes place. And so I would say that the three things you mentioned, um, in addition to that, when it comes to value, is are you giving the consumer the feeling they want? And that gets down to guest service. I mean, you got to do all the basics. It's got to be priced right, quality product, and something people want. But if you're going to really differentiate yourself, it's how do they feel when they consume it or walk out with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. Um, from a efficiency standpoint, and when you think about the operations of the business and getting more efficient as a business, what do you feel like is still left on the table for your brand? I like I guess what are the room still margins for improvement even post franchise profitability task force?
Yeah, some of the equipment. I mean, not just, I mean, everybody in our segment, I think, faces the same thing. Acai bowls are pretty late. labor intensive relative to a smoothie or something else in the category.
Yeah.
And most in our segment actually blend their acai bowl rather than scoop it. And the blenders that are out there and were designed to blend salsas and smoothies, not acai bowls, which are very heavy and viscous. And so I think there's an opportunity in that area to figure out a more efficient way to prepare the base on the bowls, for sure. And I think there are other, we're not looking at robotics or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's sort of way off for us. But I think there's an opportunity on equipment. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, cool. We've got about 5 to 6 minutes left here before we turn it over for Q&A. So I would love to just learn more, and if you could speak a little bit more about our partnership together. Um, I guess when you think about initially when you onboarded with us, was there anything in the product from like a guest metric standpoint that initially like blew you away or maybe made you think differently about the brand and how you approach the brand? Anything surprising to you?
Yeah, good question. I think the most surprising thing was how many of our customers are first-time customers.
Mm,
Um, I feel like with if you look at fast casual on the whole, that our customer base, smoothies are more a part for those that drink them or juices of their daily routine. Not like coffee, but certainly more so than hamburger
yep.
or sandwich.
Yep.
Um, and so I was surprised at how much of our sales are generated from first-time customers,
Yep.
like significantly surprised. It's not all about our regulars. They're an important part of the business and substantial, don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But the number of first-time people that walk through our front door, even in LA, our home market for a brand that's been here for 30 years, was pretty shocking. And that's a key thing to know. I mean, it lets you know that if you want to continue to grow your business, sure, you got to make sure that you're, offering a loyalty program to your regulars, but you got to constantly be out there to push new folks through the front door, because that's where the opportunity lies. That's where the opportunity to move the needle the most is.
Yeah, that's great. And then were there any like dovetailing off of that? So that's like the initial sort of high level, gut take when you first look at the platform. If we go a step further, were there maybe questions about decisions you made in the past? Maybe even going further back than sort of April 1 and franchisee profitability task force and menu changes. Anything like consistent ideas or levers that you pulled in the business consistently in the past that you sort of felt like were the right moves but didn't have data around? Has the product helped you validate any of those?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that we've done historically on a regular basis is promote gift card sales,
Hmm,
from in late November, early December, believing that, it's going to drive sales in January and February. And in connection with promoting those gift card sales, we would offer a pretty significant discount, uh, you know, buy buy $25, get a $25 gift card, get a $5 voucher.
yeah,
Um, and get the gift cards have changed, right? People aren't in the office as much passing out $25 gift cards to their coworkers.
yeah,
And so the perception has been last year from our franchisees actually that, hey, you know, let's no longer put as much emphasis behind gift cards, because what's happening is our regular loyal customers are coming in, they're buying the gift card not to gift it, but to use it for themselves so that they get the $5 voucher.
yeah,
Um, and so we were able to look at the behavior of our gift card purchasers last year. We could have gone back a couple of years, but we just went back last year. And it turns out, well, it's true. The regular customers are going to take advantage of a deal and buy a gift card and get the $5 voucher. Um, but north of 60% of all the gift cards are actually purchased by new guests. And they're really
wow,
who you want. They're sort of your promoters,
yeah,
right? If they're a new guest, they kind of want to share, hey, I'm going to this great place and I'm getting this with their friends or whatever. Maybe they're buying the gift card for themselves, or maybe they're buying it for somebody else. But the point is they're new guests, and now they're gonna now because they bought themselves a gift card, if it's for them, they're gonna repeat business. And so, whereas based on feedback from our franchisees, we were considering, less of a push on the gift cards. Based on our analysis, we've decided no, we're doing the right thing. Let's continue to promote those in a meaningful way
Yeah.
this winter so that we reap the benefits in January and February of next year.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you sharing that story because it's such a, it sort of like shows the breadth of like, you can learn high level things about your guests, but then you can also
Mhm.
drill down into a very, let's say operational and important question and get maybe a definitive answer on, whether or not we should continue this program even.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And then I think the last question I'd ask is, we talked a little bit about it on the menu side. Can you this is more for my edification, less so the audience's, but I would be very curious to understand how do you think about as you given menu innovation is one of the core pillars of the brand and keeping guests engaged, how do you think about looking at the data, understanding attachment, and understanding then, like maybe a peek behind the curtain of like, how do you come up with the trend? How do you come up what to pair it with? How does the data inform that process? I would say that's probably the last thing, to the extent you're comfortable sharing anything there.
Yeah, well, look, so toast is an example, and I think avocado toast has had its moment, if you will. But the timing was good. There was a great amount of brand awareness around it, but it was not saturated at that point, and that worked out well for us. So we're looking for, well, what's the next sort of trending ingredient that has the right amount of awareness, but it's not, I can get it anywhere,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And it's really hard to determine to time that right. Like, are you getting ahead of it? We got ahead of collagen, and that didn't work for us. But if we
Yeah.
relaunched it today, I think it would.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways, in terms of innovation that we can look at is to put it in test in a particular store
Yep.
and then monitor, how it performs in that store. For us, we generally, if we're going to look at something, and most brands will do it in multiple stores. For us, that's maybe more pertinent given our odd footprint, because what's trending or popular in California and New York may not be the case, elsewhere in the country.
Yeah.
And so we really, are looking forward to how Bikky can help us sort of delve into those test items as well as our permanent menu, to help us innovate.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, great. Thank you, David. Really appreciate you sort of dealing with questions that were in the outline I shared with you ahead of time, as well as probably half of them which were not. So I appreciate you being nimble and
Yeah.
gracious in your answers. We're gonna flip it over to the Q&A portion now. We've got two here in the queue. First one, what capabilities do you have with your internal resources and team to capitalize on the insights Bikky provides? Do you have someone doing in-depth data analytics? And how are you translating the insights into your marketing strategy?
Yeah, so good, great question, because I mean this is a extremely because an extremely powerful tool. And if you don't have a dedicated to resource to leverage it, you're not going to get everything it's capable of providing you. Um, we have a combination of folks that use it. Our IT department to a certain degree, and then we have an outside consultant. She's kind of a jack of all trades, has a finance background, super sharp. She digs in, and really the customer service rep that we have with Bikky is extremely helpful. They're available, if you pick up the phone and call them, but also we have scheduled sessions with them. But I would say it's an important consideration to make sure that you're going to devote the resources behind the platform, because the platform's extremely powerful. A lot of ways to slice and dice data, and it impacts your business.
Yeah. Yep. And this next one sort of touches on the last one, but is there anyone in particular that owns the CDP internally or in the organization? Is there a point person? Who do they report to? Are there multiple or are there users in multiple departments? I feel like you answered that a little bit, but maybe talk about, if you can, if it exists, if there's a breadth of users within the organization. Yeah.
Yeah, IT is really sort of the point person. And we've had it, I guess, what, 9 months now. There's a lot for us to still get into. I would say the opportunity for us is to look at it more, um, to measure the results of marketing efforts.
Hmm.
How did the call to action change the consumer behavior? And then, you know, duplicate what was successful and that wasn't, maybe not. And so there's an opportunity, at least in our organization, for more marketing focus, which is, on the plan for the future. But so far, given sort of the fact that we had this menu innovation sort of shortly thereafter, we weren't focused as much on the marketing out of the gate as we could have been.
Yeah. Yeah. That's helpful. Next question. I love the ability to identify those 80% of guests who are not in the loyalty program. Do you have any other examples of how you've used this data to drive traffic with these guests? So how are you using the data to drive traffic with non-loyalty guests?
Yeah, good question. And I think that's where our opportunity with having the marketing department more focused, now that we've sort of got our menu revamp behind us, and are sort of through analyzing the impact of that, and whether we made the right decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And this is honestly, you and many of the people asking these questions are way more experienced in this industry than I am. And I never put my strategic hat on because I've just been, for the 7 years I've been doing this, there are 30 years that I've been a consumer rather than just like more of a strategic minded restaurant operator. But I always actually underappreciated the extent to which the menu can be used to engage not just like every guest, not just loyalty guests, but every guest. I think that is something that I think I've particularly learned in working and seeing how you all operate at Robeks, where it's this idea of we're going to do 3 to 4 LTOs a year, and we're going to try and be conscious of trends and time them properly and sort of be in the moment with the right offering at the right time, which is exactly how people characterize marketing messages and offers. But it's using the menu itself as a strategic engagement driver, which is just a whole new way, actually, for me to. It sounds naive, but it was just a new way for me to think about how y'all approach the business. So that's a long-winded way of saying I love what you're doing.
Good.
So, last question that we have here. Have the insights from Bikky changed the way you power and strategize around your loyalty program and offers that you serve to your guests?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I don't have an answer to that question. I have to check in with the marketing folks.
Yeah.
But
I think
yeah.
that was something we just launched with y'all, was the ability to plug into your uh punch, I believe, like your punch
Yep.
loyalty, and being able to push segments in and also look at the. I think I was talking to John from your
Mm.
technology team about understanding and measuring sort of the incrementality of offers. So that's something that we're excited to dive into together, as well as the partnership continues. So
Yeah, looking
yeah.
looking forward to it.
Amazing. Well, no more questions here in the queue, so I believe we can wrap up here. But David, I just want to say thank you once again for sharing your generous time and insights with me, with this community, and the broader restaurant community. Um, I think obviously, like, the strategic way in which you have built the business, have revamped the business, you and your team have revamped the business and continue to grow the business, is one of the reasons I was really excited for this conversation. So very much appreciate your time and for sharing your insights with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to continued partnership.
Excellent. Thanks so much, David. And
All
thank you
right, take
everybody for
care.
joining us.
You
Take
got
care.
it. Bye-bye.
Bye.